Friends, so most welcome back in this new video tutorial with OSP Pro. Now, in this video I'm going to be walking with you, showing you the complete steps, doing a complete CRUD review, whereby after this we shall be doing up something called a final project, and that will be something called a supermarket management system. We shall be using what known as PHP MySQL to come up with that given stuff. So this is our thing. Now, before I get into beginner code this stuff, there are a few things I want us to understand first. At least I should expect you to have a clue in HTML and CSS if it is possible. Make sure you have good understanding there if it is okay with you. You have a good understanding in HTML and CSS. Now, if you don't also have that, don't worry, because I'm going to start straight off from from the server side, which is going to be the backend MySQL, and I'm going to be working with you, showing you the complete CRUD on how to create one, or creating the databases, deleting the databases. I'm going to show you using the complete stuff called MySQL Workbench and also MySQL Shell. So it implies that if you know you've been not having enough time to practice your HTML with your CSS, you can also comment down on the description of this video so that I can walk you around and come up with that with you. Being on the safer side, I should also advise you guys to have at least a clue on something called Bootstrap and, if possible, W3 CSS. There is also another type of CSS that has come in. It's called something like there's a name there. It's called Twere something called Twere, something of that sort. But I'm going to stick myself for now in this three CSS. CSS itself, which is going to be CSS3, Bootstrap, and W3 CSS. If maybe you're getting lost on all of those stuff, where you can find all of these things, you can just go to ospro.com. I have that section where I'm going to be putting for you guys. You'll find CSS simplified, Bootstrap, W3 CSS that you can read, or you can also just go straight on the main site, which is actually www.w3schools.com, or you can actually go to a tutorials point. I'm giving all where the sources you guys can find this stuff. Tutorials point. These are good sites for you guys to know, to learn the stuffs which I'm mentioning. You get? Yeah, you can go to ospro.com. I'm going to put the description where you guys can always comment, and I can always be in a position to respond back to your comment. I'm going to finalize all of the things that might be missing there. Now, without wasting time for now, I said we are going to be starting up learning at the moment. Lesson 1. This is mainly for my internship students who are with me here at OSP. If you also want to join my internships training, this is a hands-on training, practical training that we tend to have at OSP Training Center, and also those people who maybe want to do with us training online, you can also join our training essentials so that you can perfect your career. Not only do you happen to, maybe if you are doing your internship, you can also come in for short course programs where I'll be showing you practically how to come up with a complete application if maybe you're interested to come up with one. Now, on the other way around still, on our lesson 1, we are going to be looking onto MySQL. That implies our lesson 1 is going to be MySQL, and I'm going to be showing you guys something called MySQL MariaDB. I'm looking onto MariaDB, and then on the other way around, I'm also looking into using something called Oracle, but I'm not going to be measuring Oracle so much because I'm going to be using MariaDB Oracle, if you guys know that. And again, on the other way around, I'm also going to be showing you from Shell, or what you guys can call a CMD. Some of you guys know something called CMD. CMD is a command prompt. So my lesson is going to be organized in that manner. And then on the other way around still, under MySQL, what are we going to be covering? We shall be covering something called CRUD. You get? And there under CRUD, what am I going to be showing you guys today? I'll be showing you how to create a given database. You get? And now this one simply means how to create a table, a database, or databases, etc. That's the main work of the C. And then the R is mainly to read, like read record. Like read record, we can be looking on also tabulating those records. Now selecting everything from there, like retrieving record, selection, or something like you can call something called a retrieve, where we shall be in position to retrieve record. And then U mainly is going to be called something called update, where we shall be in position to update our record in the MySQL database. And then D, it's always something called a drop, where you can drop those records from the database, or you can actually use a statement called a delete. Now, if it's your first time session to watch this video, and maybe you're watching from my YouTube channel, maybe not from my training center, I would advise you guys to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can also comment down below on the description of this video, so that each time I post a new video, you'll always be notified. Then on the other way around, don't forget, I also have the training center where you can learn these things practically with me, okay, and get a chance to master your codes just from scratch. Now, let me just go straight to and where you start. Now, before starting up, there's something I want you guys also to master and put in your brain. How do you have MySQL DB, or how do you have MySQL and start saying that now I'm programming using MySQL? You'll need something called a server. You get? And this time around, the server I'm looking onto something called a XAMPP server. Now, what's a server? A server is the one which extends for us the connection to our PC, to the database that we shall be having in. So make sure you have the two main servers that I may say for now. There's something called WAMP server and XAMPP server. These servers are always good that when you install them on your PC, you'll be in a position to start running or using a XAMPP or MySQL into your PC, because they support MySQL and Apache technologies, whereby under Apache we have PHP, we have Python, we have Perl. Those are some of the languages that can run under if you maybe have Apache in your PC. So let me just create this short to make sure everything is okay. Make sure you have XAMPP installed on your PC, and when you have XAMPP installed, XAMPP will give you a chance to learn most of the languages. For instance, you'll be in a position to learn MySQL or to program in MySQL, to be in a position to program in Apache, whereby said with Apache gives you a chance to use something called Python. If you have that, you have to program in Perl, and even to program in PHP. You get? And also when you have Apache running, you can also run Ruby in your PHP, because you just need to configure that and have that sorted out. You can also be in a position to have something called a Tomcat, which Tomcat will give you a chance to learn Java applications. And this time around, this Java application will be in a position to be working up with something called your MySQL database which will be running. We also going to have something called a FileZilla, which this one gives you a chance to do something called a file uploads. I now am trying to explain all these things to you guys so that you can get a complete clue on what you're going to be studying and how do you use them. We also have another few things there which I may say is called a machinery. Now this one, simply a machinery, gives you a chance to deal with something called mails. Now if you want to deal up with mails, like you want to make an application that can do mails offline application etc., that's the main work of machinery. Now above all, that's not what I'm going to be sticking up on. I'm going to be sticking up the main two major things. That's making sure we deal with the MySQL, and then we deal on something called Apache. Concerning the file upload, those ones later on, guys, I'll be showing you using FileZilla, and then we shall have application done. Now, having known all what this I've said to you guys at the moment, that implies you guys have a complete clue on how all this is going to be staged up. Like I've said, I'm going to be sticking up on MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, etc., and I'm going to be dealing up with something called Shell or CMD for now. So let me just get started, and we have this off, if possible, sorted out. So I already have my XAMPP installed, and I have version 3.2.3. And make sure Apache is running. To make Apache running, you just click on Start. Like initially, this is how it will be. When you just click on Start of Apache, it will show that's now running. When you click also on Start on MySQL, means you can be in a position to program on MySQL. Now I'm going to click on this shell so that I can start using up my Apache. Oh, sorry, MySQL. You click there, a command prompt will pop up like this for you. I'm using Windows 8. You guys can maybe using Windows 10 so that this screen of yours can always maximize it to its own complete length. Now mind here, the first command you guys you have always to do is to request for the complete privilege, because when you happen to install your XAMPP, I believe by default you guys might have not set something called a password. You didn't set that, so implies you need to use the complete command that will give you complete access to your MySQL application shared. So the first command you need to give is called MySQL, then you give -h, which stands for localhost, and then -u, which stands for username, and this time around your username is a root, and -p, which is password. Here they'll ask you password, but my friend, don't give password, just leave it, because if you give any password here, then that implies your application you've been the last time you happen to set password, so make sure you don't give that one. So inside there, I think you can see it's telling us that you're welcome to the MariaDB monitor. Commands end with semicolon. That implies each command might be ending with semicolon. And it is your application, your MariaDB connection is ID3. etc. That's what we have within our application. Now, the next thing that I have to show you here, the first command is to show databases, like show databases. Now that one lists for all the databases we have. So you can say I have hundreds of databases. I have many databases in my PC. Now I'm just going to go there and try to drop a database called, before even dropping, like if you want to use a given database or if you want to create a database, you just type a statement called create database. Then when you type command create database, then go further and give a database name. I may give a database name called Oracle. You get, and give a semicolon. So when I hit enter to tell you that query okay, one row affected, so that implies again if I say show databases, I'll be having Oracle listed down. Now don't forget, create database, I just used create database, not create databases. Then you say show databases, you add S there. Why? Because you want to list all the databases that exist. So when you hit enter, trust me, you should have Oracle. I think you can see the Oracle is listed among the list of the databases present. That's good. Now, don't forget here it's showing us MariaDB none. It implies for you to go further, you need to type a command which gives a complete privilege that you can actually access MariaDB. So what I'm going to be doing now at the moment is to look for a way how you can actually access your MariaDB application, the database you have created, is by using a command called use Oracle, which is the database we have just created right now. When you hit enter, it is now changing from MariaDB none to MariaDB Oracle. It implies we are now inside MariaDB Oracle. So if you type now command show tables, that implies indirectly we're inside MariaDB Oracle and you don't have any table created up in for us. So you have now to understand which command do we use to create an up given table, or how do we create a table now in our MariaDB Oracle. So I'll type a command called create that table and then I specify the table name. Now before I happen to go much underneath there, there's some few things that I need you guys to understand so that you can get a complete clue on how these things tend to work. This is it. If you happen to go into create a given database, there's something I believe your teachers might have told you, and if they have not yet told you anything, don't worry, because I'm going to break that brain off. There's something called variables and something called data types. I know some of you guys are always not being so much keen whenever you're trying to come up with a given database, or maybe when you want to make application of that sort, but this is something very, very important. With the variables we have, like maybe for instance, a variable refers to an element holding a place value of another element. For instance, we have x and x equals to 4. Each time a program says x, it will be known that x equals to 4. If this is kind of confusing to you guys, please check all my C programming language videos. Check my C programming videos. You get? Yeah, check my C programming videos. This will going to introduce you to all of those given stuff I'm trying to mention at the moment, whereby you learn variables and the data types to the length, if possible. If not so still, I'm going to look onto my PHP application or Python language that I made videos on. Now on the other way around, this is what I'm trying to say. I've said x equals to 4, then each time the program says x, it will be known that x equals to 4. So here, when you come back down here on our program, there's few things that you need to master. What are those? Each time a program says like maybe f name or first name, you cannot just say first name. We need to know how to write a variable. And if you write like that, then implies you are wrong. The right statement you have to give is to write something called first underscore name. That implies I'm using camel casing. I'm using underscore. With underscore, that's where you give a minus, but you hold shift, then you press minus on your keyboard. If you want two words. If you don't want to write like that, you can also just give it F name. You have joined it as one smaller word, so it's still okay with you. So the application will also work for you as expected. On the other way around still, if you don't want to write that way, this is the same thing with someone trying with last name. This is still wrong. The right way to write your variable is to give something called, maybe if it is last name, you can either use camel underscore, or you can use camel casing, whereby you'll give it maybe before even now camel casing, if you just give F name, or if you don't want to give it that one, you can give it in camel casing, where you say last, then the next statement becomes capitalized. You get? So this becomes last name. You are very correct. So this one here, I mean, just now I have used underscore for these two statements. Here I've just joined them if maybe you don't want to match with a lot of camel casing order or whatever. Here I'm using camel casing platform or program or ways on how to come up with that given stuff. So that's how they do that in simple term. Then on the other way around, if you maybe that's always okay, there's something called data types. So what's a data type? A data type refers to the format in which an application is stored in a given programming language. The format in which an application is stored in a given programming language. So this is very, very important for us, especially when you're going to create a table. We need to know how these tables are going to be defined. Which data types do we have, and which variables are we trying to specify in that given application. For instance, here, if you say F name, which is our first name, this implies in a simple term we're dealing up with the characters. And now, how do you store them? You can store them as a char, or you can go further and utilize something called a variable character. And then, how many characters are stored in MySQL? They store from 1 to something called 255 characters. If you're using MySQL version, the one I'm using. Now, if you don't want, if that's for variable characters. For integers, this is where the confusion comes in. If I say 1 in simple term, it implies I can store from 1 person to 9 people. If I happen to come in and say int maybe 2, it implies I can store from 1 person to something called to how many people? So I can store 1 to 99 people. If I say 3, it implies I can actually store, that int means I can store from 1 person to something called 999. Now most of you guys are kind of confused. You always see a program when people say int 11, and you always get confused. Or even if not, so if you're using PHPadmin and that's what you've been using in your application, I think you guys always find something so confusing, whereby when you say int 11 and then you just go straight further on your application and then you say, you know what, what's int 11 all about? Int 11 simply means that application can store from 1 person to something called 99,999,999,999. That's what simply that application means. So don't get confused. So simply integers, they tend to use something called place values. So if you guys can understand that truly on that way, please I request you guys to share these videos to your friend. All of this stuff I'm trying to list down here. If you maybe want a copy of it, I can also summarize it and I put it on my website, whereby you can just go on and follow along with me even as I'm trying to make this video. So you guys, you can watch, as you're watching the video, you can also have this. I'm also going to make for you guys a simple book, and I'm just going to charge a little fee. Just $1. If you're from Uganda, I'm just going to ask you 5,000. I'm going to make a simple video for MySQL. That implies if you want to download this book, it's just going to be at 5,000 Uganda shillings. So you guys, you can always support me if you feel like what I'm doing is worth it to be paid for. Only if you know that it's worth it to be paid for. Now, on the other way around still, when you go back here down on this application, there's few things I want you guys to know and to master. If I take you back a little bit on our creating table, we need to know which table are we creating. On the creating table, we need to know the variables, just like I've listed down for you there. And don't forget, always there's the default thing which is called an ID, which you always have to create, because an ID should be a unique identifier for our table. We need to give it as a data type. Now this time around I'm giving it int maybe 11. We need to go further and specify. We have maybe we're going to be saying first name. I'm just going to be using F name. I'll also just use L name to simplify the application. So if you're also watching this video and you want me to give you a hand on maybe making for a database for a company or for a project, or you have a maybe mobile app project, maybe a PHP project, you can also comment down there so that I can give you a hand, because I'm giving you a complete clue on how to create up this and how to come up with a killing application. So here, create table, and this table name we give the table name. Maybe the table name is going to be called let me just say we have something there called students. So you open up, so you can, instead of opening, you can just go down and then I start from down. So I have int, we have something called ID, so that can be student underscore ID. I can go further and then I just say this is going to be int 11, which I already told you that's like really 99,999,999,999. If I say not null in simple term, means it's a must, that field should have a value. If I say auto increment, means in the simple term, if the first value is 1, let the next value be 2. So please, there's some few things that you call increment in programming. If the first value is 1 and you say increment it, it's just someone saying plus plus, or in another way around, it's someone saying x is equals to x plus 1. That's what that statement means. That be giving us x, but next time be giving me x plus 1 to each time x is called, and that's calling x. So this statement simply means the same thing. If you don't want to write that way, it's also same as saying x plus equals, there's no space there, 1. That each time we're down, increment for me with a plus sign, or add for me each time x is called, and increment 1 on it. I know this is kind of confusing because it's not very much common in MySQL, but I'm trying to explain to you. Some of you guys are from different programming backgrounds, so this should be a good working statement for you. So if you come back down here on this application, find me in this way, that this should work out for you. So not null into auto increment means each time add 1 to it. We also said their first name. Remember I told you there concerning those given stuff, just know that it's like trying to say move from 1. And then that implies you're going to be storing characters. So storing characters, if it is 1, implies I cannot store 1 letter. If it is 2, it cannot mean I store 2 letters. If it is 10, now someone like Schwarzenegger whose letters are 14 characters, it can never be stored all. It implies the last 4 digits will not be stored. So why do you want to hack the application? I told you can store from 1 to something called 255. So to be on safer side, you can even give 100 for just the first name. You lose nothing. So this can also be not null, means it's a must. I want that field to be having a value or having a character. And 2, it's also not a must for you to put always not null. You can just say null. Why? If you want that space to be skipped up, you can always leave it null. So it's okay. We also have something called error name, whereby this in simple term we're trying to check someone's last name. You can also say not null. I always like using that because I don't want someone to mess up in the application. The next thing you need to consider now at the moment is something called a primary key. I want to ask you guys, what's a primary key? A primary key simply helps us to uniquely identify which fields is going to be more unique within our application. And this time around, our unique identifier, our unique way of identifying the variables within the application is something called the ID. And that implies we're going to say ID, open up there and say student underscore ID. That implies the student underscore ID we specify here is the unique identifier in this application. You get? Next thing, now remember I open up somewhere here, so I have to just hit enter, come in there and I close. So when I hit enter, oh, I think I messed up somewhere. Student underscore ID. I just tried to show something shortly. Create table students, student ID, not end, no 11, not null, that's good. Increment, okay. First name version, not null. Last name Vash. Oh, sorry, my Vash is wrong. Really, my last second Vasha is wrong. So it is actually wrong. I discovered where the problem is. So all that's wrong because of the first one. So I've seen where they messed up. That's it. That's good. That's called Vasha. That's great. Now this one is wrong. I think you can see there's some mixed typing error. That's a Vasha. And then here, if you check back again, that's okay. So when you try to check here again, I have that primary key, good. And when I hit enter there, I think you can see now my field's okay. It was just because I messed up here and I tried to give it double. I think you can see that. That should be done for you. Now the next thing is that when you are done with creating up your given table, how do you try to identify? Can you describe your given database table you created? It's just by typing something called describe for me. You can say describe for me a table called students. You get? That implies at the moment the table already exists. That's just like if you also want to say show for me the students table. Just show for me students. Show for me tables. Whereby when you say show tables, tell that we already have one table exists and that table is called students. Then you can go further and say list for me students. Whereby this students gives you a chance to know which table or students table created up. And that's it. So that should be done for you guys in a simple term. I said you can always use this or describe, whatever way. It can always work out for you. And when you do that, trust me, you should have that sorted up in that way. So that's a simple way you can always say about this application if you know maybe interested in this. Now the next thing, how do you insert values into this table? You can always insert values by trying to say insert into our table called students. Now the fields, I know guys, you always have to use to these things something called student underscore ID. We have F name, we have error name. You get? That's good. But I'm going to share another simplest way that you don't waste time for all those stuffs. Where this student ID, we said that's going to be auto increment. Leave it as null. Where there's someone's name, I can just always put the OSP. Then the last name is actually pro. No? Yeah. So if I hit enter, I think you can see if I say select everything from this table of ours, which is called students, we should have a one column affected, and that's it. Now if you don't want to do that, you can also just simply say insert into students. Then you go further, don't even waste time for what? Just a student, give just a space and save values. Now if you know that I have a field for an ID, leave it as null always. Here put the name, maybe Naiga, if whatever thing you want to give. Then the next thing you can always give is proceed, if that's the name. Whatever, if you hit enter, that's what should do. So search for the record. It implies indirectly I'm respecting the variables that goes under students table, but I must value the values instead of the students, where I go to specify these given columns or these fields. So still does the same thing. It implies if I go further on my code and I simply say select everything from students, that should have the same values just inserted down for me. If I still use my arrow key and I simply say I want to insert more people, I can just come in here and I enter another person that I want, maybe race. Maybe it's called a racer team, whatever. If I hit enter, that field should just be inserting for me. And if I say select everything from that given record, maybe that's going to be students, trust me, we should have our students within there inserted. That's so great. Now the next thing that I have to now explain to you more, to give you guys a given complete course for this thing that I'm teaching you, is not to understand how do I add another column, adding new column on existing table. Okay, let me just give assumption. Let me show you guys. Maybe I'm going to add another column called course. So you'll simply need to say add, actually alter table, our table which is called students, add column. So you're adding column called maybe courses, Now, if you say adding column called course or courses, whatever, I don't know the courses or course, whatever, add a column course. Now, column course still is a varchar, so just say varchar, maybe 100, and you can go further, say not null. You get? Now, you need to specify after what? Maybe after error name, maybe after last name. So we are trying to specify that given field, and you want someone to add a new column. So that's how they add a new column. It implies, if I get to go further and say describe from his students table, we should have the new columns that is added for us. And I think now you can see we have students, courses. And that implies indirectly, if I go further and say select everything from students, trust me, we should have that field empty. Now, how do we insert new record into that field? Now, look here again. If I say insert into students, and I go further and I do what I've been doing, maybe values, just like that. I believe you guys already know that where there's null is always our ID. Then here I can give a name of the person. Maybe I have maybe Oswald, maybe Nasa, Sira, whatever, Nasa Sira. That's the name. The course is being you specify. Maybe it's being BBC. BBC. Oh, business computing. Bachelor's in business computing. Good. So if I save that and I just give a semicolon, I hit enter. If I say now select everything from our table, which is actually students, you guys are going to realize that the column we are happy to insert instead goes down instead of to that given person that you want the column to affect. So this is what you have to know. When you try to insert, it does not tend to change the field that already have values. When you try to insert and is affecting the new column you have created, it implies indirectly it's going to create a new field down. So if you want to go on and even this person OSP Pro and add a course for him or her, you need now to update. So this pushes us to update record. So whenever you say update, you just basically say update students. So you set, maybe set course is equal to, the course is equal to maybe bachelor's in computer science, if that's what the guy did. Then you specify where what? Where student underscore ID is equal to 1. So what am I trying to specify here? Whenever you're going to try to maybe, whenever you're going to try to insert record, so update record in the database, please, we always use a student answer the ID. Why? Because it's the only unique identifier we have in the given table. For instance, you may have someone's first name, maybe it's OSP, and they have over 5 OSPs. Last name maybe Pro, maybe you have very many of them. So to avoid such kind of errors, we just utilize something called the student ID, or the ID that in that case. And that implies if I go further and I say select everything from my table, which this time around the table is called the students, we're going to find that that part of the column has been updated, and that gives us a chance to have that sorted out. Please, this is same as updating the second person in our table. If the person is being Bachelor's of Science in Computers in Software Engineering, that's how you gave it. So if you come in here and update that number 2, trust me, that's the same thing that will happen in this record. So please, that's the same way how we always insert record in the database and update them. Now the last part that I have is how do you delete record from the database? To delete record from the database, simply say delete. Then now delete is different from drop. Delete just deletes record in the row, and then you drop the complete table or a database itself. So delete from students, you get? So you say where what? Delete from students, where maybe you say where student underscore ID maybe is equal to 3. So this definitely deletes first a team race from the database, and that implies if you say go back, select everything from our record, which is called students, we should have that record taken off. So that's how we delete record from. Now maybe something that I didn't much talk about If I may take you back a little bit, is something called read. When reading record, there are many options. You can always do that. You can simply say select for me row, just one personal row, F name from student. So this just definitely select for your only first name. If you want to select first name and the last name alone, you simply say select for me first name, comma, last name. Okay, so you simply say specify that. I said select from first name, comma, last name, then you specify from where? From the table. On this time on the table is called students table. And that's it. If you want to join those two records together, you can always use concat. So do something called select, then you say concat for me, something called first name. I didn't give the space. I'm going to make a space in between so that I can specify the first name and the last name. Then if you do that, then you say as what? That implies I want to join them as names. You get it? Then you simply say from students. So this gives you the last command, and that's going to be the names. You can actually join back the same things and even the courses. Like for instance, select concat for me, something called first name, make space there. You also give last name, and then space last name, give it as maybe names. Okay, then you simply say give also comma because you have more record to give courses. So I'm selecting per. You get courses or course from our table, which is actually students. You get, and if you hit enter there, trust me, that's what we have. Otherwise, my friend, thanks for watching this short video. If you find it interesting, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Each time I happen to upload a new video, you will always be notified. And if maybe you have a friend or colleague who's looking for the same pro and want to know maybe how to do these things practically, if maybe you have been maybe do with me this course, because this is a complete CRUD and a complete application on how to do that. I know there are just some few things that I know you guys are going to comment if at all is missing here. For instance, how did you delete a given, or how do you remove a given column? How do you change a column name? How? I know such kind of questions may raise from some of you guys. But don't worry, all those I can make for you guys videos as long as you comment down on this video subscription on my YouTube channel, so that each time I make a video you're always notified and always be in position to access them. My videos on YouTube are always free. And also you can also go to my website and support me if you find that my videos are worth it being supported. So share this video so that most of your friends can always be notified, and please make you guys subscribe so that each time I make a new videos you can always be in position to not be notified. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to come to Always Be Addicted Solutions for our courses. You can request for the online course that I make for you, videos such as good videos like this, so that each time I make a video, your videos are very unique. So thank you for watching. May God bless you.